Chairs explosions away from bankruptcy, the SpaceX story. In the unforgiving vacuum of space, there's no room for second chances. One miscalculation, one faulty component, one tiny error in a million lines of code, and months of work along with hundreds of millions of dollars can vanish in a spectacular fireball. This brutal reality nearly destroyed SpaceX before it ever had a chance to revolutionize space travel. By 2008, Elon Musk's ambitious rocket company had burned through nearly all of its funding, suffered three catastrophic launch failures, and stood on the precipice of bankruptcy. The company had exactly enough money left for one final launch attempt, one last shot to prove that a private company could successfully send a rocket to orbit or watch 6 years of relentless work disappear forever. This is the story of how SpaceX came within minutes of complete failure, only to emerge as the most valuable private company in the world. The genesis of SpaceX traces back to 2001 when Elon Musk, fresh off selling PayPal to eBay for $1.5 billion, turned his attention to what he considered humanity's greatest challenge, becoming a multi-planetary species. Frustrated by NASA's lack of concrete plans for Mars exploration and shocked by the exorbitant costs quoted by traditional aerospace contractors, Musk initially attempted to purchase refurbished intercontinental ballistic missiles from Russia to create a low cost Mars mission. When Russian officials literally spat at him during negotiations and demanded $20 million per missile, Musk realized he could build rockets more efficiently from scratch. In May 2002, he founded Space Exploration Technologies Corporation with $100 million of his own money, establishing headquarters in a former warehouse in Hawthorne, California. The company's mission was audaciously simple: reduce space transportation costs by a factor of 10 and enable the colonization of Mars. Musk assembled a team of aerospace mavericks, many poached from established companies like Boeing, Lockheed Martin, and NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory. Tom Mueller, who had been building rocket engines in his garage as a hobby, became SpaceX's first employee and chief propulsion engineer. The team embraced a philosophy that was heretical in the conservative aerospace industry: move fast, break things, and iterate rapidly. While traditional rocket development took decades and cost billions, SpaceX aimed to develop their first rocket, the Falcon 1, in just 4 years for under $90 million. They chose Kwajalein Atoll in the Marshall Islands as their launch site, a remote location 1,500 miles southwest of Hawaii that required shipping every component across the Pacific Ocean. The Falcon 1 was designed as a two-stage rocket capable of delivering 1,400 pounds to low Earth orbit at a cost of just $6.7 million per launch, roughly one-tenth the price of comparable rockets. The first launch attempt came on March 24, 2006, after 4 years of intensive development and multiple delays. The Falcon 1 stood 68 feet tall on its launch pad, powered by a single Merlin engine burning rocket-grade kerosene and liquid oxygen. As the countdown reached zero and the engine ignited, the rocket initially lifted off successfully, climbing into the Pacific sky. But just 25 seconds into flight, at an altitude of only 300 feet, disaster struck. A fuel leak caused a fire that severed the rocket's main power cable, cutting off communication with the guidance system. The Falcon 1 began spinning wildly before crashing back to Earth and exploding in a massive fireball visible from miles away. The failure investigation revealed that a corroded aluminum nut, costing less than $1, had caused a fuel line to leak. Despite the setback, Musk publicly declared that SpaceX would achieve orbit within the next two flights, a promise that would prove painfully optimistic. Undeterred by the first failure, SpaceX rapidly prepared for their second attempt. The team worked around the clock to address the fuel leak issue and improve the rocket's design, incorporating lessons learned from the initial failure. On March 21, 2007, almost exactly 1 year after the first attempt, Falcon 1 Flight 2 lifted off from Kwajalein. This time, the rocket performed flawlessly through the first stage burn and successfully separated its stages. For several minutes, it appeared SpaceX had achieved their breakthrough. However, during the second stage burn, the engine began oscillating violently due to fuel sloshing in the tank, a phenomenon known as pogo oscillation. The violent shaking caused the engine to shut down prematurely, leaving the rocket in a suborbital trajectory. Although the second stage reached space and transmitted data for several minutes before falling back to Earth, SpaceX had once again failed to achieve orbit. The near success was somehow more frustrating than the first flight's immediate explosion, proving that the company could build rockets that worked, but highlighting how many complex systems needed to function perfectly simultaneously. By 2008, SpaceX was rapidly burning through its initial funding. Musk had already invested $100 million dollars of his personal fortune, far more than he had originally planned, and the company was spending approximately $4 million dollars per month on operations. The third launch attempt took place on August 2nd, 2008, carrying multiple satellites, including a NASA payload and a satellite for the Malaysian government. The stakes couldn't have been higher, as SpaceX desperately needed to demonstrate success to attract additional investment and retain existing customers. The first stage performed perfectly, and the rocket successfully separated its stages. But during second stage engine startup, a timing issue caused the first stage, which should have been safely falling away, to recontact the second stage. The collision caused both stages to tumble out of control, destroying the rocket and its payload. 3 launches, 3 failures, and SpaceX was now facing a crisis that threatened its very existence. Customer confidence was evaporating, employees were questioning whether the company's approach was fundamentally flawed, and competitors were openly predicting SpaceX's imminent collapse. The aftermath of the third failure brought SpaceX to its darkest hour. The company had enough funding remaining for exactly one more launch attempt, and failure would mean bankruptcy and the end of Musk's space ambitions. Traditional aerospace industry veterans dismissed SpaceX as another Silicon Valley startup that had underestimated the complexity of rocket science. Boeing and Lockheed Martin executives publicly questioned whether a private company could ever reliably reach orbit, suggesting that decades of government investment and institutional knowledge were prerequisites for success. Meanwhile, Musk was simultaneously dealing with Tesla's near bankruptcy during the 2008 financial crisis, forcing him to divide his attention between two companies that were both fighting for survival. He was sleeping on the factory floor, living off loans, and had invested virtually every penny of his PayPal windfall into his companies. The pressure was so intense that Musk later admitted he was having regular anxiety attacks and barely sleeping 3 hours per night. Despite the mounting pressure, the SpaceX team worked with desperate determination to prepare for their fourth and final launch attempt. They conducted an exhaustive analysis of the third flight failure, discovering that the timing issue had been caused by residual thrust from the first stage engine after shutdown. The solution required precise timing modifications and additional separation mechanisms, changes that had to be implemented perfectly since there would be no opportunity to test them before the final launch. On September 28, 2008, Falcon 1 Flight 4 stood ready on the launch pad at Kwajalein. The entire SpaceX team understood that this was their last chance, and employees gathered around monitors at headquarters in Hawthorne to watch their company's fate unfold. As the countdown reached 0 and the Merlin engine roared to life, the rocket lifted off flawlessly. The first stage burn proceeded perfectly, and stage separation occurred exactly as planned. The second stage engine ignited successfully and burned for its full duration, placing the rocket into a stable orbit at 65 miles above Earth.
The successful fourth flight transformed SpaceX from an industry curiosity into a legitimate space transportation company overnight. Within days of the successful launch, NASA awarded SpaceX a $1.6 billion contract to deliver cargo to the International Space Station, providing the financial stability needed to expand operations. The contract validation attracted private investors, and SpaceX raised an additional $20 million in funding within months. But Musk and his team understood that one success meant nothing without the ability to replicate it consistently. They immediately began scaling up operations, developing the much larger Falcon 9 rocket capable of carrying 50,000 pounds to low Earth orbit. The Falcon 9 incorporated 9 Merlin engines in its first stage, providing redundancy that would allow the rocket to complete its mission even if multiple engines failed. SpaceX also began developing the Dragon spacecraft, designed to carry both cargo and eventually astronauts to the International Space Station. The transformation that followed SpaceX's fourth flight success defied every prediction made by industry experts. The company went on to achieve a series of unprecedented milestones that revolutionized space transportation. In 2012, Dragon became the first privately built spacecraft to dock with the International Space Station. In 2015, SpaceX achieved the first successful landing and recovery of an orbital-class rocket booster, dramatically reducing launch costs by enabling rocket reusability. By 2020, SpaceX had broken Boeing and Lockheed Martin's stranglehold on government launch contracts, capturing over 60% of the global commercial launch market. The company's valuation soared from near zero in 2008 to over $137 billion by 2022, making it the most valuable private company in the world. SpaceX now launches more rockets annually than all other American companies combined, has transported dozens of astronauts to space, and operates Starlink, a constellation of over 3,000 satellites providing global internet coverage. Today, less than 2 decades after those three catastrophic failures nearly destroyed the company, SpaceX stands as the dominant force in commercial spaceflight and the primary contractor for NASA's human spaceflight program. The company that was once three explosions away from bankruptcy now launches approximately one rocket every week, has reduced launch costs by more than 90% compared to traditional providers, and has made space accessible to a new generation of entrepreneurs and researchers. Musk's ultimate goal of establishing a self sustaining city on Mars no longer seems like science fiction, as SpaceX continues developing Starship, a massive rocket designed to carry 100 tons of cargo and passengers to the Red Planet. The near death experience of 2008 taught SpaceX that success in space requires not just brilliant engineering, but also the financial resilience to survive multiple failures while learning from each setback. That lesson has guided every subsequent decision, from maintaining large cash reserves to developing multiple revenue streams that don't depend on any single customer or market. The company that almost died from three explosions has since conducted over 200 successful launches, proving that sometimes the greatest empires are built not despite catastrophic failures, but because of the lessons learned in surviving them.